Nobody knew where the cloud had come from. Sunrise revealed it drifting alone above the city's eastern rooftops, a pale tuft edged with rose gold. All around it, the sky was a flawless spring blue, so clear that air traffic controllers were already predicting an uncomplicated day. Yet the solitary vapor mass remained, meandering like a thoughtful wanderer who had forgotten the direction of home. It was an unobtrusive visitor at first. Pigeons wheeled beneath it, commuter trains murmured through tunnels, and office lights winked on one by one. But the cloud listened, if a cloud could do such a thing, to everything rising from sidewalks and terraces. The cough of engines, the gossip of baristas, the throb of headphones leaking music nobody else could hear. Under those sounds lay subtler vibrations, pulses of hope, sparks of restlessness. These invisible tremors pressed gently against the cloud's misty skin, and the cloud, who was lonelier than it cared to admit, discovered it could answer. As the first wave of subway passengers poured from East Station, Lian Chen paused on the concrete steps, fingers tapping absently at the strap of her portfolio case. She was a young illustrator, alternately fueled by determination and self-doubt, heading to an interview that might finally yield a full-time contract. 1,000 anxious sentences fought for room in her chest. What if they hate my style? What if they Google me and think I'm inexperienced? What if I freeze? She exhaled. The questions rose like heat from pavement and brushed the underside of the drifting cloud. Without warning, the vapor stretched. Wisps uncoiled, knitting together into slender curves, then expanded into wide, padded surfaces. Passers-by looked up as the lonely traveler turned itself into a gigantic paper crane. Its wings beat soundlessly, creasing and refolding as though caught mid-origami. Sunlight feathered the ridges with silver, and a faint hush washed over 50 astonished strangers. A small boy tugged his father's sleeve. "Look, Daddy, it's like the one we made in school." Leanne's breath stopped, and an adobe of certainty formed inside her. She would present her portfolio exactly as she'd practiced. She had, after all, spent years drawing clear lines and graceful folds. Her sketches of cranes filled sketchbooks forgotten under the bed. The cloud's shape felt like a private nod from the universe. Her fingers steadied, smoothing her blouse. She stepped off the stair and into the crowd, heartbeat still quick, but no longer disorderly. Nobody realized the cloud had answered a wish because nobody had articulated that wish aloud. They merely sensed that something clarifying had drifted into view, and then, like a puppet freed from strings, the crane melted. Vapor soared upward, shrinking and spinning until it resembled its original tuft once more. Morning progressed. On Maple Avenue, the aroma of cinnamon and baked apples spiraled out of Maison Lyon, the city's famous patisserie. Inside, Tilly Duarte, head pastry chef, dabbed sweat from her forehead. The bakery's reputation was formidable. Visiting celebrities insisted on macarons flown cross-country, and dedicated food bloggers camped outside for limited edition tarts. But for months, Tilly felt trapped, repeating signature recipes like a jukebox of butter and sugar. She craved permission to experiment. Chamomile-infused brioche, miso caramel eclairs, a papaya rose donuts. Her crew relied on the classics to keep margins safe, and the owner refused to gamble. So Tilly imagined possibilities in silent bursts. What if people trusted my palate? What if I could feed them something entirely unexpected, while piping vanilla custard into pastry shells? Outside the bakery's skylight, the lonely cloud drifted overhead, hearing her unsounded questions. A swish rippled through its fibers. Doughy globes bulged outward. Glaze-colored shades, warm and glistening, rippled across the vapor until it resembled a colossal brioche wheel ringed by sugared petals. The scent of the shop intensified as if echoing the vision. Customers in line, jaded by smartphones, looked up in unison through the glass roof. Conversations broke mid-sentence. One elderly woman clasped her hands. "Good heavens," she whispered, "a bread halo." Tilly's sous chef hurried in from the storefront, cheeks pink. "Boss, you have to see." She did see. Her chest ached, not with envy, but with unstoppable yearning. It felt as though the sky had baked her secret dough and held it aloft. By the time the cloud sloughed off its brioche disguise and returned to shapelessness, Tilly's mind was already rewriting the next day's menu. Screw risk. The city deserved to taste new dreams in warm, edible form. Hour by hour, the phenomenon continued. The cloud answered, patiently and wordlessly, to needs nobody voiced. At Goldfield Park, retired civil engineer Roshan Gupta sat on a bench feeding squirrels. Decades earlier, he designed the arcing footbridge across the river, but arthritis and budget cuts had retired him long before he felt finished. Lately, he haunted the park, counting flaws in the city's built environment: eroding stonework, benches without shade, narrow wheelchair ramps. His mind buzzed with draft angles and tensile load calculations, yet he feared irrelevance. No one commissioned wisdom from an old man in suspenders. He watched the sky absently. The clouds swelled, flattened, and angles formed. Trusses, beams, triangular webs of cotton, until a perfect scale model of a suspension bridge spanned the firmament. Children on scooters braked hard. Joggers slowed. A collective intake of breath rippled across the grass. Roshan rose involuntarily. For a moment, he believed he could climb that misty structure, test its cables, adjust its curvature. Tears blurred his vision, not from sadness but belated recognition. His knowledge remained useful as long as people still needed to cross chasms. That night, he would register as a volunteer consultant for the city's public works clinic. Arthritis be damned. The pattern unfolded street after street. A nursing student looking for courage received a white stethoscope cloud. A lonely musician rehearsing solos in an alley saw a saxophone curling above him, opening with silent riff. A pair of women debating whether to propose to each other noticed twin interlocking rings afloat. Word spread fast, photos posted online, shaky videos chiming with disbelief, yet no algorithm or meteorologist could explain it. Only one feature remained constant. The cloud drifted alone, never joined by siblings, never swallowed by weather fronts, responding solely to private pulses of yearning across the city grid. Mayor Celeste Mayares learned of the anomaly mid-afternoon. Her chief of staff barged into a planning session clutching a tablet. On the screen, a live feed from Civic Square displayed the vapor, now shaped into a colossal open book, pages fluttering. Behind it, the municipal library's bell tower gleamed like a spine. Are we dealing with a publicity stunt? The chief asked. Anxious aides offered theories: projection mapping drones, a viral campaign by some tech startup. But Celeste watched without speaking, her own chest stirring with a memory she hadn't touched in years. At university, before law and politics hijacked her timetable, she'd dreamed of writing oral histories of immigrant families, hers included. Words, voices, languages crisscrossing margins. She had abandoned that ambition, believing she could serve more tangibly by drafting housing ordinances. Yet seeing the enormous cloud book above the square felt like a penned promise waiting for her to sign. For a dizzy second, she pictured herself interviewing abuelas in stoops, archiving lullabies from dock workers' sons. Her throat tightened. She excused herself to the corridor, telling staff she needed a private call. She wasn't alone. In apartments, schoolyards, clinics, bars, citizens felt the sky eavesdrop on their hidden sentences and reply with shapes that validated them. Some grew exhilarated, others uneasy. Eventually, as happens when wonder lingers, the city began talking to itself. The question rose: if a cloud can notice us, why can't we notice each other? Next morning, an editorial appeared in the Daily Beacon, signed by social psychologist Anton Matsuda. The cloud, he wrote, is a mirror made of vapor. It shows us what already floats inside our neighbors. We are being asked, politely, to lift our heads. The piece went viral. Community boards buzzed, churches and cafes hosted pop-up wish circles where attendees voiced dreams before the cloud could translate them. Meanwhile, the cloud continued roaming, careful never to duplicate shapes. Somewhere between noon and sunset, it detected a heaviness mingled with its usual intake of desires, a static, metallic sadness. The source was an abandoned rail yard on the industrial edge of town. In that yard, 16-year-old Marcos Alvarez sat on a graffiti-tagged shipping container, hoodie drawn tight. The previous night, his older brother had been arrested during an immigration raid. The family's future sat on the precipice of deportation hearings. Marcos had skipped school, unwilling to answer well-meaning counselors. Anger roiled inside him, faceless and volcanic. In one clenched thought, he wished the whole city felt his family's terror. In the next, he wished he had the power to guard them all. Vapor circled above. The lonely cloud rippled and condensed until it became a gigantic pair of wings, eagle in outline but wrought in storm cloud charcoal, muscular and defiant. The wings flapped once, sending shadows across rusted tracks. Marcos's breath caught. Hot tears escaped before he could curse them back. Strength, the wings promised, protection. He hopped off the container and ran home, deciding he'd testify at City Hall if lawyers needed voices. But the transformation had drained the cloud. Summoning dark density forced it lower, and the effort tugged at its edges like wind worrying its sails. For the first time, plumes scattered. It managed to reform, smaller, dimmer. The sky noticed. Weather patterns that had ignored the anomaly now sensed a disturbance. Warm air rose from asphalt. Late-season chill slid from distant hills. Cumuli formed platoons on the horizon, their bellies heavy with unshed rain. Vance curious ready to subsume the solitary stranger. The lonely cloud understood it might be swallowed and paradoxically felt lonelier. After a day and a half of communing with hearts below, it no longer wanted to dissolve anonymously. Humans can petition one another. Could a cloud petition humans? It would try. All afternoon, it hovered above City Hall Plaza, awaiting the evening rush of foot traffic. Commuters collecting bikes and children took notice. The cloud puffed, shrank, repuffed, searching for the correct emblem. Finally, it chose an unambiguous shape, an ear, vast and delicate, every whorl sculpted in pearly vapor. It rotated slowly as though listening. Mayor Ramirez, leaving a budget meeting, saw the ear. So did journalist Anton Matsuda, pastry chef Tilly, engineer Roshan, illustrator Lian, and hundreds of others whose secret wishes had already been honored. They gathered in the plaza almost magnetically. No permits filed, no megaphones blared. People simply sensed they were being called to finish a conversation. Rain clouds pressed closer, steel gray against the city's skyline. A hush fell over the plaza. One brave soul climbed the granite steps, a teacher named Gabrielle, who'd earlier glimpsed a chalkboard in the heavens. She cupped her hands, shouting upward, "We hear you!" Instead of dispersing, the ear twitched. The crowd felt childish and magnificent all at once. Gabrielle continued louder, "Do you need something from us?" The ear vanished. A new shape unfurled. Two hands, palms together, cradling emptiness. The gesture was unmistakable. "Please." Mayor Ramirez's staff cautiously approached her, anxious of optics. She waved them off and walked to the plaza center. Her voice, trained for campaign rallies, projected without amplification. "If this is real, and I believe it is, our visitor has granted us kindness. Now it asks for ours. The question is, what can a city give a cloud?" Wind gusted. Distant thunder answered. A teenager, Marcos, newly emboldened, called out, "Shelter!" "But clouds can't go indoors," someone protested. "We could name it," offered an elderly seamstress. "Maybe it needs friends, not just a name," cried a child balancing on a parent's shoulders. Ideas tumbled faster, fly ropes of incense to guide it, launch biodegradable lanterns so it's not alone at night, sing. The discussion ping-ponged until Tilly, the pastry chef, clambered onto a planter. "Listen," she said, her voice sweet but firm. "All day we've been inspired to act on personal dreams. Now we have a collective one. Keep this being with us safely." She pointed at the advancing storm front. "We can't stop weather, but we can show solidarity. Let's make tonight a citywide dream broadcast. Show the cloud what we want for it. Protection. Maybe a safe harbor will form somehow. At worst, we'll give it the gift of being seen." The plan formed on spot. Social media exploded with a single directive. 8:00 p.m. rooftops and balconies, think one thought. You are welcome here. And display something that means shelter to you. Umbrellas flipped inside out like cups. Quilts hung over ledges. Paper houses. Flashlight beam circles. Public radio stations synchronized soft instrumental music reminiscent of lullabies broadcasting across neighborhoods so even those without internet might join. News outlets, initially skeptical, relayed instructions. Sunset bled into magenta. As church bells tolled 8, apartment windows open, bedsheets painted with protective symbols fluttered, flashlights blinked steady heartbeats. On the waterfront, dock workers aimed spotlights upward, forming a luminous nest. Children atop fire escapes waved cardboard wings shaped into domes. Some whispered prayers, others recited poetry about refuge. The aggregate wish rose invisible but potent, like heat from summer soil. and the lonely cloud parked above City Hall felt the updraft of intention curl around its vapor. It quivered. The oncoming storm paused, confused by the thermal boundary that suddenly intensified, thousands of tiny warm currents rising in unison, forming a buffer layer. Meteorologists would later record a localized temperature anomaly, a city-sized bubble 2 degrees warmer than its surroundings. Within that bubble, condensation processes shifted, storm clouds reoriented, sliding northward along the outer edge like freight cars switching tracks. The plaza remained dry. The lonely cloud glowed faintly, tinged lavender by neon signs below. From every direction, cheers erupted. Some people cried, others laughed at themselves for crying. In rooftop gardens, strangers shook hands, recognizing each other's silhouettes from afternoon glimpses and morning hashtags. For a couple hours, the metropolis felt like one enormous living room. Of course, atmospheric equilibrium could not be postponed indefinitely. Near midnight, the protective warm layer dispersed. The storm circled back, gentler now, dropping drizzle instead of downpour. The lonely cloud did not flee. It drifted lower, as if wishing to brush rooftops. On Persimmon Street, 7-year-old Noor Han stood on her family's balcony, clutching a stuffed giraffe. She whispered a new wish, maybe the last one the cloud would hear that night. "If you're lonely," she said, "you can be our cousin cloud. Come back whenever." Above her, moisture thickened, a small tendril descended, forming a new globule beside the original. The larger cloud nudged it like an elder sibling, encouraging first steps. Spectators gasped softly. A second cloud had been born. By dawn, the two travelers floated west toward the horizon, charcoal spines brushed pink by first light. They would not remain forever. Clouds are, by definition, passing, but neither would they vanish unnoticed. The city they left behind was subtly rewired. Within weeks, Leon was hired by a design firm that embraced her crisp style. She launched a side project illustrating the cloud's shapes, profits earmarked for art programs in public schools. Tilly debuted a brioche infused with star anise and orange flower. She called it Nimbus. Customers queued before sunrise. Roshan joined the Public Works Clinic. His proposal for shaded benches using recycled rail ties won a municipal grant. Marcos, with help from a legal aid fund started by readers moved by his story, spoke at council meetings advocating immigrant protections. His brother was released pending a fair hearing. Mayor Rami Riathez reopened her college notebooks and commissioned an oral history project, hiring high school interns to record the recollections of first-generation residents. More tangible than individual triumphs was a cultural afterglow. Cafes set aside cloud hours where patrons voiced aspirations to strangers. Neighborhood associations installed wish kiosks shaped like tiny weather stations collecting anonymized dreams to inspire civic projects. People did not always agree, but they paid attention. If coexistence was a sky, listening was its atmosphere. One gray morning, months later, when everyday worries had begun to reassert themselves, rent test scores, taxes, leak repairs, someone on a riverside walk pointed at the horizon. A small, familiar tuft drifted closer, not alone but accompanied by several fledgling companions stitched from the same radiant vapor. The passerby smiled instinctively, her burdens lightened by the memory of that extraordinary night. Above her, clouds surveyed the city with calm curiosity, ready to reshape themselves according to the next tremors of silent desire. And below them, people lifted their eyes, prepared to answer back.